Welcome to At Home and Abroad with Harris and Walker. Join us each week as we follow our curiosity, diving deep into the familiar and the foreign. Reach beyond your front door as we uncover new perspectives, explore intriguing ideas, and have real conversations with the best guests. Ready for something different? Let's get started.
In 2017, James Vlahos's father, John, was diagnosed with an aggressive form of lung cancer. Faced with his father's inevitable passing, James felt desperate to find ways to document his father so he could preserve his memory. He began to record his father's stories. After his father's death, James adapted these recordings into an interactive AI chatbot, lovingly named Dadbot. Dadbot and James could chat. If James wanted to know what his father's favorite song was, he would just ask, and he would receive the answer in his father's voice. Dadbot led to the web app Hereafter AI, an interactive memory-sharing app that preserves the stories of a beloved family member in their voice. For James Vlahos, it allowed him to maintain a connection with his dad, and in his words, gave him tremendous solace in his grief.
Wow, I did not expect that to be the intro to this episode.
It's different, isn't it?
It's really different.
I recorded my phone conversations I had with my own dad before he passed away. Of course, this was way before the days of apps and AI, but it was important to me to be able to capture the sound of his voice and his laugh. I wanted to be able to share a little bit of him with my own children who would never be able to know him. Mm-hmm. That's something you just can't convey in photographs.
No, you can't. And that's really awesome that you did that.
Well, nowadays, we're taking videos all the time, but these AI services fill a different need than just a recording. Mm-hmm. Did you know that technology even can allow us to talk with a video of someone who has died?
Wow.
Yes. In fact, 87-year-old Marina Smith actually answered questions posed by guests at her funeral via technology called StoryFile, which was founded by her own son, Stephen Smith.
Well, that would be quite the experience. That's not a funeral I've ever been to, but was it really a conversation, Walker?
Not in the true sense, no.
Okay. But having that ability to listen to your loved one and connect on any level, I think would really help those people who are grieving.
Well, not everyone thinks so, though. Some grief experts believe that this type of technology could keep people from moving forward with the natural process of mourning.
Right, I can see that. Perhaps it delays the healing, but that void a loved one leaves behind when they pass is sometimes unbearable. Maybe those people who are really suffering might become dependent on that technology.
Oh, I could see that. You know, we want to hang on to our loved ones. It's just impossible to process their absence, and we really want to know that they're okay, that somehow they're still with us and still part of our life. Mm-hmm. According to Dr. Steve Taylor for Psychology Today, up to 3/4 of people suffering bereavement say that they've had experiences of a form of communication with loved ones who have died.
Wow, 3/4?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I know. Dr. Taylor does clarify that this communication takes different forms, ranging from actually seeing them, sensing that they're nearby, or even smelling their perfume.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. This kind of contact beyond the grave even has been reported to involve touch or hearing their lost loved ones.
And many people feel that their loved ones communicate in other ways, right? Like the appearance of a cardinal or a butterfly.
That's right.
Yeah. There's no wonder why so many people reach out to psychic mediums and others who work in the spiritual realm. They're trying to regain that connection to their loved ones, perhaps even attempting to gain answers to questions they didn't have the time to address when they were alive, especially if someone passes suddenly without warning.
Yeah. Now, you must have seen that movie Ghost, right?
Oh, yeah.
Patrick Swayze plays the ghost who channels through Whoopi Goldberg to speak to his grieving widow, played by Demi Moore.
Mm-hmm. That was such an awesome movie. And it really did show the difficult emotion that's wrapped up in loss. When someone passes, we often want reassurance that they're still present somehow and bearing witness to the big moments in our lives, like graduations and weddings and that kind of thing. And of course, often we still wonder if particularly our parents are proud of us wherever they are.
Now, have you ever gone to a psychic medium before, Harris?
I have not, but I am a huge fan of many of them and have always been fascinated by their work. But what about you, Walker?
I have been to a psychic once, but they didn't speak to any of my deceased loved ones. They were more interested in telling me about my future.
Okay.
A psychic medium is a psychic who can also communicate with the dead.
Right. Okay. So not all psychics are mediums.
Apparently not.
Okay.
Now, I have had a few experiences with psychic mediums, though. I did a couple of virtual sessions, both with well-known mediums Matt Fraser and John Edward.
Okay, so you have some experience then on the psychic medium circuit.
Yeah, that's
Who
me.
knew? So were you hoping to be read or were you disappointed?
Well, I was hoping to be read, and yes, I was very disappointed. I was just a spectator.
Well, you're in luck today, Walker, because we are talking one-on-one with psychic medium Blair Robertson. For over 30 years, spiritual medium and best-selling author Blair Robertson has been helping people live happier and fuller lives through his message, Love Never Dies. He does so through his live events, online seminars, and courses designed to help people reach new levels of spiritual understanding. Welcome to At Home and Abroad, Blair.
Hey, good to meet you, ladies. Thanks for having me on.
Oh my gosh, we're so excited. I can hardly sit still in my seat. Okay, so we better start off right at the beginning. When did you discover this remarkable gift that you have?
Well, I've always been able to see and sense deceased loved ones. That's been like my family members. From my earliest memories, I was basically an only child. My brother and sister are 18 and 19 years older than I am. I wasn't expected, so I grew up alone. So I always felt that there was people around me, and I now know, looking back, that they were my deceased loved ones of my family. I wanted to be a magician, and I wanted to be a magician so badly. I wanted to be the next David Copperfield in Las Vegas. And so I worked with a great magician in Toronto by the name of Eddie Dijon, and he couldn't figure out why I wanted to be a magician as soon as he found out that I could do psychic readings, and I was intuitive and could talk to the dead. But I wanted none of that. I wanted the magic and the girls. So that's
Makes
that's
sense.
one reason. Yeah, just the pretty girls in the little outfits. That's it. So I was 13 years old, and I was walking home from the Canadian National Exhibition. And for the international folks that won't know where that is, that's in Toronto. It was at one time the biggest exhibition in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a flash of my grandmother, my mother's mother, and she had been dying. She was in a hospice. She weighed about 80 pounds, had so many strokes. She couldn't eat. She couldn't talk. She looked horrible. In fact, it scared me the last time I saw her.
Mm-hmm.
And she appeared in a purple cloud in front of me. And suddenly she smiled at me. And I instantly knew that she was passed on. And I knew also that she was okay. When I walked into the house, my dad said, "Sit down." And he never talked to me like that. And I said, "Nanny died." And my mom and dad, just their faces just hit the floor. My dad was military, and he said, "When did you see this sign?" And he did the calculations, steps, how fast you walk and all that. And the exact spot that I saw my grandmother was the exact moment she had passed.
My
And
gosh.
while that's might sound Stephen King-ish and scary, it was anything but scary. It brought me peace. Then the floodgates opened. I started talking to my friends and family, and I would see dead people, but I knew they weren't mine. And
Really?
and I would say, do you know somebody that looks like this? And somebody's talking about that. And there's a lady saying that you've got a Bible wrapped up in a chain and you use it for divination, and it's underneath a couch. And there was a Bible wrapped up in a chain underneath a couch at my friend's
Oh my
place.
gosh.
And
That's so specific.
all
Yeah.
kinds of cool things started happening. There was no John Edward, James Van Prague. This is before all of that. No Teresa Caputo. None of these other people. There was nowhere to learn this stuff. So I had to learn it just by doing it and practicing it. And here we are today.
So you didn't feel at any time unsettled by that after, I mean, obviously that experience with your grandmother was really reassuring.
Very much so.
But then when you started seeing other people that weren't connected to you in terms of family, did you feel at any time a little unsettled, or
No,
you were quite comfy?
No, it's interesting. It's in the movies, one of my favorite movies is by Stephen King. It's called The Dead Zone. One of my favorite actors in the world, Christopher Walken, right?
Oh, he's the best.
Scary as crap.
What a vibe.
And they're horrific. And he, it's brutal. It's scary. And he turns into the town freak and all of that stuff. It's not like that in real life.
Right.
It literally is peaceful, calming, reassuring. And even when the heaviest of messages comes through from deceased loved ones, it's always from the position of heart love. They want the best for you. So you might not like what they're saying to you, but they want the very, very best for you. And that's all
It
that
comes from
matters.
love.
That's my
Yeah.
game. That's how I see it. Never, ever have I ever been scared or nervous or put out by the messages that come through or spirits that come through.
That's so wonderful. It's rooted in love. It's
It
rooted
is
in
very
love.
much so. Very
Yeah.
much so.
What a beautiful thing to share.
Thank
So,
you.
how is it different communicating with the dead than it is communicating with the living?
Well, because we have a lot of jerks living on Earth. So
Now,
some
that's the
people,
truth.
so when they come through from the other side, they're pure. So we don't change personality when we cross over to the other side. Our personality is pretty much the same. I'm known for being direct and blunt. If I was dead, I would come through direct and blunt. If I was very soft and quiet and generous and kind and wallflowerish, then that's how I would come across. So, but they're pure from the other side. So it's much easier in the sense of connecting with them because they don't have the hangups. They're not political anymore. They're not angry anymore. There's no agenda anymore. They're just your loved one deceased at peace, alive in heaven. And so it makes it easier. There's no agenda with stuff that comes through. We as humans living here, we have agendas, whether you want to say that we do or not. We do, because we want things for ourselves. We want things to work out a certain way. So that's where communication becomes a bit of a challenge.
Right. Absolutely. You have to sort of sift through all of that.
Yeah.
Whereas this seems to be a lot more straightforward. Can you see them, Blair? Or is it more of a feeling?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I love when I get asked that one. So there's no such thing as a sixth sense. The sixth sense, Heather, doesn't exist.
Okay.
There's only five senses. So they communicate to me using my five senses. So sometimes I hear things, see things, smell things, feel things, and taste wise, taste is really rare. That doesn't happen too much.
Okay.
But sometimes I'll be like, wow, I just feel like I'm getting like cocoa beans. And it's like, oh my God, my mother ate cocoa beans all day long. That was like her
Right.
thing. So, or my dad used to shallots, the onions, those
Yeah.
long things. He used to eat them by the bushel. So I'll sometimes get the shallot taste in my mouth, and I know my dad's around. But where people get confused is I also have an additional thing, which is called clairvoyance, which is just a fancy pants word for I know stuff without knowing how I know it. So I know the answer is 10. I can't tell you if it's 5 plus 5 or 6 plus 4. I sometimes just know things, and that's like a download that they will give me as a medium. And so I'll just blurt out stuff. And how do you know that? I don't know how I know it. I'm just telling you what I
It's
know.
just a knowing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's super cool. So, what do you think are some of the common misconceptions people might have about your work? Because, as you say, there are so many popularized mediums on television and that sort of thing these days. Do you think that there are some misconceptions about what
Yeah, there
you
are
do?
some. I'm very grateful, for example, deeply grateful for Teresa Caputo. She has really brought mediumship out of the closet, but most people don't realize this sounds like a slam, and I don't mean it to be. It's not intended to be this way, but people think that we just talk to dead people all the time, 24/7. If I'm in the grocery store, I got dead people talking to me. It doesn't happen like that. I always like to remind people that while I loved her show, it was reality television, and there's no such thing as reality in reality television.
That's right. It's entertainment.
It is entertainment,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that is a problem because we're getting some of these folks that are getting television shows, and they're designed for entertainment. Some of them are just flat out fake, and the problem I have with that is there's one, I won't mention the name, but there's a medium that when you see the videos on TV or watch them on YouTube, oh my God, can tell you your social security number, can tell you the
Mm.
first address where you were born, name every single relative. Then you go see them live or they're on a television show or on a broadcast like this, and they're screwed because they weren't able to do the research in advance. So
Right.
it sets people up thinking that we know everything, and we don't. I only know what a deceased loved one tells us or tells me. I can only speak for myself because my style is a little different from everybody else's too. The biggest misconception, though, that really is frustrating to me is twofold. Number one, that people die. You don't die. Your body dies. We're all going to die physically someday. Your spirit goes on, and your loved ones are not dead. They prove it on a daily basis to me, and they prove it. If anybody follows me, they'll see the proof regularly. Your loved ones aren't dead. They're alive, and they're sending us signs on a regular basis. The second aspect to it is, in the United States of America, there are 400 known variations of Christianity. So imagine you go
400.
to, this is from the US government, they've documented this. So imagine going to one of those mega shopping malls, and there's 400 stores. It's huge. It's a giant one. Every single one, it's a Jesus store. But this Jesus store is the only one that's right. All the others are wrong. And you go to the next one, and that's the only one that's right, and the other ones are wrong. So a lot of religion has, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. God's not religious either, which shocks some people. Here's the deal. When people say, oh, somebody passed by suicide, they're going to burn in hell, that just makes me lose my mind.
Of
Because
course.
some people had pain added to them because they believe, because their priest told them, oh no, your brother's dead and burning in hell and you're never going to see him again. That causes more pain than anything else. There is no hell. We all go to the heavenly realm, and their brother in that fictitious case is okay. So that's the misconceptions that drive me the most nuts.
Yeah, because they're disadvantaging people and making people feel that their loved ones aren't safe and at peace and happy. That's one thing I really took from. I read your book,
Thank you.
Afterlife.
Thank you.
Got it right here. That's one thing that I really took away from it, that we don't die, and this is just sort of our temporary vessel, and then our souls or our essence lives on. I find that a very, very reassuring.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad the book has got just shy of 1,500 4.5-star reviews. That means 9 out of 10 people think I'm wonderful, and that's a good feeling. I got to.
Well, you got 2 here. You definitely got 2 here, and I'm sure our listeners are going to feel the same way, Blair. So you're on a really good track. So Blair, from what I gather, your gift has really been a gift in more ways than one to you. But I'm just wondering, has there ever been a time where you felt like communicating with those who have passed on was a burden? For instance, where there's so much pressure, somebody really needs an answer out of you, because they're in so much grief.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge, is sometimes people are in so much grief and they're desperate for things. I bend over backwards. Really, I really go excessive, that some of my friends and followers tease me about it. But I make sure that if you're really desperate, that you don't come to one of my sessions, that you don't come to one of my group situations, because it's called an unintentional block, Lauren. And when you desperately need something, or you desperately need to connect with a deceased loved one, they never put gas on the fire. So they're not going to come through and jump through hoops and show you signs if they know that that sign is just going to make you more sad or put you into a bigger grief state. You have to ironically get to a state of being okay that they're passed over to the other side. Maybe there's unresolved issues. Maybe there's things, there's lots of the stuff that they want to heal you. But until you're okay with it, really, it's not, you can't come, because you're not going to get anything out of it. Your expectations are all wrong. And they're only doing that for you out of love. They don't want to hurt you anymore. They don't want you to suffer any more pain. I always use the analogy, and again, my followers roll their eyes when I do it, but it's the same as if I took a hammer and I smashed your toe. It's going to probably break it. You'll be screaming, yelling, crying, upsetting, cursing me, and all of that stuff. It's going to hurt tomorrow. It's going to hurt the day after, assuming you get a cast, let's say. A month from now, you still might not be able to walk properly. It's still going to have that residual pain. You can't be, doing stuff. You can't concentrate on doing your taxes, what's for dinner. All that goes out the window. You need to focus on healing first. Then we can look at, remedies to why and how it happened and all of that stuff.
I think people would be really surprised to hear that, because I'm sure when people are in that spot, you're the first person they want to run to.
Yeah, you got that exactly right. And that's the reason why I bend over backwards. I'm not a fluffy medium. My style really turns some people off, of which I'm glad, because I want people to come under the right circumstances and right conditions because I really want to heal you, but you have to do your work before I'm able to facilitate healing you.
Mhm.
So that's a good question. You guys are good. You guys are good. Yeah, I foresee you guys really have this whole thing taking off for you. I foresee that. It's
Oh, wow. You're saying the
I love
magic
that's
words
music to
today.
my ears.
Have you ever had to turn anybody away because they come back so much and that
yes,
you find that
yes,
they're dependent on you for life
yep,
decisions and
yes.
that healing?
Yes, that happened a lot during COVID.
Okay.
During COVID, it put the world into a really weird spot. I mean, it was surreal. I still can't believe it took place,
Mhm.
but it's the first time the entire planet's been locked down. A lot of benefits came out of it, and nobody wants to talk about that. A lot of spiritual benefits.
Interesting.
But at the same time, yeah, there was people that were wanting to reach out to me every single week
Mhm.
for stuff. So I stopped doing one-on-one readings. I quit doing those. So that cut it off. You couldn't come to me for a one-on-one reading for any price. I focused
Okay.
on the groups so I could heal masses of people. And for that, I'm grateful because COVID forced me to invent. I'm the first guy that did group readings on Zoom. Everybody started
Mhm.
copying me, and that's cool. But it just forced me to have to do it, and
Mhm.
it helped people literally around the planet. So it was a good thing.
So, in your book, Afterlife, which I read as well, you teach how we can communicate with our loved ones who have passed.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
I'm a big believer in the spiritual number of threes. So I've got three
Ah,
different ways that you can do it in the book. But the first one is to be aware of signs. So in the book, I talk about different types of signs. You don't need to buy the book. I'll just tell you what it is right now. Signs can be anything. So sometimes people will say, well, a red cardinal, that's supposed to be a spiritual sign. But sometimes the cardinal is just eating food outside your window. It's not your mom. Sometimes a rainbow is just a rainbow. Sometimes a feather is because there's a stray cat in a neighborhood that took out a bird, So be careful about what you perceive to be a sign. Here's the magic key. And I wrote about this in the book. I'm going to give it to your listeners right now. Here's the thing. You don't have to Google or wonder if something is a sign. You will know it's a sign. So can a feather be a sign? Yes. Can a cardinal be a sign? Yes. But you'll know, and you'll know in your heart of hearts that that's your loved one reaching out to you, trying to give you a sign, and just to show gratitude. And they have no problem in sending us signs to let us know that they're okay, they're happy over on their side. And let me just add one other thing. Most people don't realize that our deceased loved ones are super happy on the other side. They're not sad. I've never, in 40 years of doing this, I've never once ever had somebody go, Blair, it sucks over here in heaven. They just play those musical instruments all day long. There's feathers everywhere. They never say that. They never say it's all. But here's the thing. They're happy.
yeah.
And a lot of times they've suffered in pain, say from cancer for 12, 18 months. They're glad to be out of that body. Trust me on that one.
Yeah.
They're not sad they died. They're happy. They're free now. So we need to start seeing it through their eyes. And the
Mhm.
moment we become okay, and the moment we become able to see it through their eyes, we can actually find happiness that they've passed. And that will bring us the peace and freedom we need. So, for the listeners that are listening to this podcast right now, I urge you just to ask for signs and watch for them. Don't try to make something into a sign. Let it be.
Mhm.
The second one that I would like to talk about, the easiest way for loved ones to come and give us a sign is through what's called a sleep connection. So while you're sleeping, and you'll know it's them because dreams are usually weird. They're bizarre. Weird stuff happens. You wouldn't be able to tell me if you said I had a dream about getting a letter. You wouldn't know if it was a postman or postwoman, UPS, the post office. You wouldn't know because it's a dream. It's weird. But a sleep connection, you'll see them as clearly as you can see each other. You will see them, hear them. If they touch you, you'll feel it. If they give you something, you'll instantly know what it is. And when you wake up, you'll feel like if I just opened up my eyes a second earlier, I would have seen them. But you can't because they're energy now. But they have to be actually in close proximity to you for you to feel that connection. So you are feeling their energy, and that's a sure sign that you had a sleep connection the night before. And it's really cool. It's fun. It's very peace inducing when you have that happen.
Do you, and I'm just going to throw this out there, do you ever have spiritual energy come to you while you're sleeping for other people? Like people that aren't connected to you?
No, so
Okay.
that never happens. See, I'm literally one of the things I like to do to shock people sometimes, just to get them to pay attention in my large group sessions, is I like to tell people that in 40 years, I have never once brought through a deceased loved one.
Oh,
And the audience usually goes, "Why are we here? What's going on? Has he lost his marbles?" And it's because I don't bring the people through. I'm a medium. I am the medium that brings the messages through. The people in the audience are the people who bring the spirits through. So when I'm laying in bed by myself, I don't have you in the room. I don't have an audience standing around me. So there's nobody for me to pull through. So therefore, it would only be my loved ones that would come
okay.
through. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. This
Yeah.
really
So
clears
anytime
it
somebody
up.
says I had a deceased loved one, Abraham Lincoln came and talked to me and said, never, 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 never.
Someone gave you the lottery ticket numbers.
I wish. I get that on my Facebook page all the
I
time.
know.
People are the skeptics, right? They'll say, "Well, give me the lottery numbers," and it's like, if I could get the lottery numbers, why would I give them to you? Are you stupid?
Exactly.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Oh, so true. I'm curious how you continue to grow as a medium. You were given this gift at a young age. Do you grow and change as a medium over time?
Absolutely.
So you do have your own personal continuing
Oh,
education going
absolutely.
on.
Well, I like to remind people that when I do my group sessions or I'm doing readings for people, spirit often talks to me too, indirectly. So just on Saturday, I had an online group session. It was beautiful. It was just amazing. And this is fresh. This is brand new. This is hot off the press. This is hot off the press. This lady said, I need to learn how to say no to my relatives who were leeching off of her. And all of a sudden, it was her mother, I believe it was, that I was speaking to. I just remember the message. She said, "No, stop saying no to the family that's leeching off of you and start saying yes to you." Powerful. And I was like,
Mhm.
whoa. And of course, on my screen, I'm doing a Zoom broadcast with a couple hundred people, and everybody's faces just like popped. It was like, wow, that was amazing. And it was amazing. So after 40 years, that was a new thing for me, that when you say no to somebody, you're not saying no to them, you're saying yes to you. You're giving yourself some freedom. So I learned something, and as everybody else did at the group session. So I'm constantly developing, constantly learning. When I write the books, I don't feel I write the books. They're not being written by me. They're lessons I've learned from spirit, from dead people that have shown me wisdom. So the profound wisdom in there that people, wow, you're amazing, Blair. You're incredible. No, I'm not. I'm just a monkey that talks. And
You're a very humble medium there, Blair.
well, speaking of humble, I have to tell you this. You might like this, and you might need to edit this out. I don't know, but whatever. I hope you leave it in. I was asked to be on a podcast during COVID, and one of the free questions was, who's the number one psychic medium in the world? And I said, well, that's impossible, because you've got like about 800 number one mediums, the number one television medium, the number one medium here, number one there, and it's sickening. It's all ego. So I
Mhm.
said, I'm actually the number two medium. And the reason why I call myself the number two medium on the planet is because nobody else is fighting for the second spot. So I am literally the undisputed second best medium in the world. So isn't that great?
I love that.
That is fantastic.
You guys will be
I
able
need
to brag
to
about
adopt
that.
that attitude, Blair.
You'll be able to brag
I
about
love
that.
it.
We didn't get the best one, but we got the second best.
We got
And
the
he's
second best, and that is the best in our eyes.
no competition, none.
Love
None.
it. Love it.
So, Blair, what's on the horizon for you?
Well, more of the same.
Okay.
We've been finding, and I'm very transparent about this. I made my reputation off of touring all over North America, doing live events.
Right.
But since COVID, they've been doubling and tripling the costs of, meeting rooms, hotel rooms to stay at. Travel costs have gotten through the roof. And I believe in keeping my fee. I'm not the highest price medium. I'm not the lowest, but I'm certainly not the highest. And we've been realizing that doing the live tours is just getting too expensive. I refuse to charge $150 for a person to come and see me when you could come to one of my online sessions for $20.
Oh, my goodness. That's a big difference.
It's huge. And here's the other thing. A very good friend of mine, she's a follower, but she's become a very good friend, Nancy, from Florida. She said, Blair, when you come to Melbourne, Florida, for example, you're just getting the people from Melbourne, Florida, you know, but when I go online, I've had people from every country you can imagine. I've had them from Germany. I've had them from China. I've had them from Japan. I've had them from Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, you name it. I've had people all over the world attend my events because when you do the online, I can reach out to more at a cost that's, $20, and it's $20 per. Have all your family sitting on the couch if you want. It's per device.
Right.
So it really is a better way for me to reach people. And I guess your listeners won't be able to see where I'm at, but I'm literally sitting in my office. I've got a nice, comfortable chair, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So because I'm getting old and cranky now. I'm 58. I'm 58.
As am I.
Yeah,
As am
and
I.
I don't like airports anymore.
That's right.
I don't like to travel anymore. I get
Yeah,
crotchety.
no. Yeah.
Crotchety medium. That's not a good thing.
A new tagline.
There you go.
Well, one of the things I like to do is I like to take my subject matter extremely serious. But as you've seen, I don't take myself seriously because people come to these events and they think they're going to be like funerals, and they're not. They're actually celebrations of life. They're happy when they come through. The joy of the healing from people. And, every day I get posts on my Facebook page or emails where people say, that message changed my life, or attending changed my life. So I got the best job in the world. It's super cool.
Yeah. Well, Blair, it's been a fascinating conversation. You can learn more about Blair's work on his website at blairrobertson.com, following him on Instagram at Blair Robertson, or attending one of his live events currently scheduled in Ontario, Canada.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Blair.
Thank you very much, ladies.
I have always been very curious about people who have this gift.
Me too. So would you like to be able to communicate with those on the other side?
I'm not sure. I bounce back and forth on this one. I think probably I do, as long as it didn't involve seeing dead people who are, let's say not at their best. Like the young boy did in the movie The Sixth Sense. Remember that?
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
What about you?
Oh, I don't know. I think it could be quite a magical thing, but I can imagine it might be pretty overwhelming or unsettling too. And there are a few ways, though, Walker, that you can communicate with the dead. One of them Blair already mentioned, which is clairvoyance, and that translates as clear seeing. So you have the ability to see anything that is not physically present, such as objects, animals, or people. And then, I don't know if you've heard of this one, but clairaudience, it's just as it sounds. It's usually defined as the ability to hear the voices or thoughts of spirits. And then finally, there's clairsentience, which is the ability to have an impression of what a spirit wants to communicate or to feel sensations that the spirit puts upon you.
Right. Now, a 2021 study published in the Journal of Mental Health, Religion, and Culture looked at 66 mediums who were clairaudient, as well as 188 members of the general public. Now, it was discovered that mediums were more likely to experience imaginative activities or experiencing altered states of consciousness and unusual auditory experiences primarily earlier in life. Their findings also indicated that spiritualists often developed an interest in the paranormal only after having had, and as a means of comprehending, an anomalous experience.
Cool. So what is a spiritualist, Walker? Let's define it.
Well, the dictionary definition of a spiritualist is a person who believes that the spirits of the dead can communicate with living people.
Okay, so it does make sense that people who have childhood experiences, such as clairaudience, like that study said, might lead them on the path of spiritualism.
Yes, seems so. And did you know that apparently 21 to 22 years is the average age when people begin to have these clairaudient experiences? Yeah, it's pretty cool too, Harris. Listen to this. Apparently 65% of mediums hear voices of the dead inside their head, and 30% hear voices inside and outside their head.
I would think that the first few times you experience this might be a little off-putting, right?
Well, I was thinking the same thing, but after speaking with Blair today, maybe not at all. It didn't sound like he has ever been frightened or even uneasy.
I know, that's so true.
You knew that spiritualism was actually a religious practice, right, Harris?
Well, I kind of knew it, but I do think it makes sense.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? According to Mary Tayson, the author of The In-Betweens, The Spiritualists, Mediums, and Legends of Camp Etna, those who practice spiritualism believe that spirits have the ability to communicate through mediums. Pretty straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, according to Tayson, spiritualists believe that these beliefs go way back, but the religion itself was founded in 1848 by teenage sisters Margaret and Kate Fox, who told their mother that they could communicate with a dead person living in the walls of their house.
Yikes! I bet that was a bit of a surprise for poor old mom.
Chances are.
Yeah.
Apparently, the girls would ask the spirit a question, and the entity would communicate by clicking, a sort of Morse code form of communication.
Okay, so how did this movement of spiritualism really take off then?
Well, Tayson says that with the massive number of Americans who died during the Civil War, the country was unprepared for how to deal with grief that followed. And spiritualism offered people a way to deal with this grief.
Well, it does do that for sure.
Yeah, just 30 years after the Fox sisters came on the scene, millions of Americans were following spiritualism. Even some pretty well-known folks like Thomas Edison, Mae West, Mary Todd Lincoln, and even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote about the history of spiritualism. And even Canadian comedian and actor Dan Aykroyd considers himself a spiritualist. His own great-grandfather was a spiritualist who was known for holding seances.
Oh, that's so cool. Maybe that's where some inspo for Ghostbusters came from. So you mentioned Camp Etna. What was that all about?
Well, Camp Etna was founded in 1876. It was a camp for spiritualists in Maine.
Is it still in operation?
You betcha.
Wow.
Anyone can visit in the summertime and request a sitting with a medium. It was fascinating to hear Tayson speak about her personal experience at the camp while conducting the research for the book.
Why is that?
Well, she said she was a self-reported skeptic prior to her time spent at the camp, but during the 5 years that it took to write the book, she said she became a believer.
Well, 5 years? That's quite the commitment.
Even more curious, though, is that Tayson says that the mediums that she met are even skeptical of themselves.
Well, I think anyone would be, right? Particularly at the outset of discovering your gift. But as Blair said, most mediums grow and change alongside their gift, which means questioning, exploration, and new directions sometimes.
Right. Even Dr. Taylor, who we spoke of earlier, also touched on the fact that those who experience some form of ability to communicate with the beyond are apprehensive to talk about it.
Yeah, that's because they are afraid people are going to think they're cuckoo crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wonder how many people have experiences but are too afraid to speak up.
Oh, I wonder.
Have you ever had any experiences, Walker?
I have, not a voice or a vision, but a very obvious sign that a loved one was trying to communicate with me that they were around. It happened after a pretty deep conversation I had with someone about my deceased loved one. How about you, Harris?
Well, I've had a few experiences that gave me pause, definitely. Most recently, actually, one of my dearest friends sadly experienced the tragic and sudden loss of her longtime partner. And on that morning, she had just texted me that they had gone to hospital, and I knew something was wrong and I was going to meet her there. But on my way there, I had this real sense of her partner pushing me to get there faster. And I knew that he was gone, but really I had no idea what was happening at all at the time. And it's been a year now, and the weirdest thing just happened a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about him. We were walking in our local cemetery, which is not as creepy as it sounds. It's actually quite like Central Park or something. And we were talking about him and if he communicates with her. And then she stopped suddenly. She said, "Oh my God." And I said, "What?" And right beside us was this massive gravestone with his name on it.
Wow.
I know.
I love that.
I know. So cool. So who knows, right? But the whole mystery surrounding death is something most of us are curious about. So we seek more knowledge, like at seances or with Ouija boards.
Oh, I think you know my opinion on those.
Oh, yes. We share the same opinion. But I don't really hear about seances that much anymore these days, though I'm sure they still happen. I know there's like seance entertainment experiences at Halloween, which are not really the real deal.
Well, that would be fun.
Yeah, it would be. I would love to attend a seance. They were really popular during Victorian times.
Really? I didn't know that.
The word comes from the French séance, a sitting, or from the verb asseoir, to sit.
Well, that makes perfect sense. So what's involved, Harris?
Well, it depends on who you ask. There seems to be a variety of ideas about how to conduct a seance. Most often, we envisage a small group of people gathered around a table in a dark room holding hands, and the medium usually leads the seance and addresses the spirit world. Questions are asked, and with any luck, ultimately something will happen to indicate the presence of a spirit entity. You know, things like lights flickering, knocking, that kind of thing. And I just should mention that as we are recording this episode, the lights are flickering above my friend Walker here.
Well, it's the type of thing we see in movies, but I was going to say that as well, that is happening right here.
A little creepy. Yeah, so that seance scene is pretty iconic in Hollywood, but if you do a little reading, not everyone thinks you need to be seated around a table or holding hands. The groups can vary in size, and sometimes crystals, pendulums, and Ouija boards are involved.
Back to the board again.
I know, keeps coming back. That Ouija board has been around since at least the 1800s. So with it, you ask the spirit world a question, and your answer will be spelled out with the planchette, which is like this little thing you move around on the board. But the question is, do they work? Many people think that the movement of the planchette is just a result of the player's hands resting on it.
Now, those are the non-believers.
Correct.
And the believers?
Well, many believe that they truly connect with the spirit world, and be warned. It is said that Ouija boards can make you vulnerable to bad spirits, not just the spirits you want to connect with.
Well, I remember psychic medium Sylvia Brown saying that the Ouija opens a door to the dark world.
I loved Sylvia Brown.
Oh, I watched many interviews with Sylvia.
I loved her. And definitely there's no convincing required here, Walker. That is one board game I never want to play again.
Okay. I sense a story here, Harris.
There is a little story about the Ouija board. I was playing at my friend's house in, I think it was grade school or high school. I can't remember. Anyway, her sister was a known psychic. She believed she was psychic. And their house was haunted by their little familiar ghost, George, who would hide things and do silly things. So it was kind of a paranormal household anyway. And her big sister said, well, let's just play with the Ouija board. I don't remember what she asked. I don't remember what happened. But all of a sudden, the glass in the French doors of their living room started to shake and rattle so loudly that my friend and I just jumped up and took off. Isn't that crazy?
Totally. I think I would have left a little sooner
Yeah.
than before the glass shaking.
Maybe when the board came out.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I know we've covered this before in other episodes, but people also have connections with the spirits on the other side when they have a near-death experience, right?
Yeah.
They have these communications.
There are so many remarkable stories which cross all cultural boundaries. People often report meeting relatives who greet them after their soul has left their body. And I think that's such a reassuring thing to believe.
Oh, I agree. So animals and children are supposed to be more adept at sensing the spirit world, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Apparently, children are still deeply connected to the spirit world. But it gets really interesting when a child is young enough to still connect to the spirit world, but they're also mature enough to be able to communicate what they see and hear.
Right.
Many kids do report having seen ghosts standing in their room or describe playmates with which their parents cannot see. My daughter had two of these kinds of friends. One was a very well-behaved little friend, and the other was a very naughty little friend. She had the most hilarious names for them, too.
Well, I think many parents write these stories off as imaginary friends, but in some cases, children provide very detailed accounts of visitors who they can accurately describe and who are uncannily similar to relatives who have passed. Also, kids often describe spirit visitors who have come to them at the exact time their relatives are recorded as having passed, as Blair mentioned, happened to him.
Right. I found it really interesting, too, that Blair insists that we don't need a medium to connect with our loved ones, like that sleep connection he was talking about. I know people who've reported experiencing this.
Yeah, me too. Dr. Eliza Meadows, a board-certified internist, actually shared her own personal experience with her son Eric, who passed away in 2009. She was about to go to sleep when she saw her son and sister at the foot of her bed. Her sister was sitting while her son was hopping from one foot to the other, looking at her and shouting, "Mom, you can see me." She and her son then shared a hug. Dr. Meadows describes her son as feeling solid.
Wow, that is an incredible story.
Yeah, isn't it? How lovely to be able to feel a hug from your own child again. Can you imagine?
know. Yeah, and Dr. Metis is no dummy. She's a doctor, after all. I wonder if she was apprehensive about going public with her experience.
Well, interestingly enough, she was. She said she was reluctant to speak about the experience because she feared ostracism by her colleagues. She said that the last thing she wanted was for my peers to think that I was crazy or woo-woo.
Right.
Yeah, but not only did Dr. Metis describe this incredible experience, she also suggests 3 ways that people can strengthen their faith and heal grief.
Okay.
She first suggests reading books about the afterlife. She encourages learning more about death in the hopes of understanding that death is not a finality, but a transition to another dimension, again, like Blair said.
Right.
Yeah, she compares our inability to see our deceased loved ones to not being able to see radio waves. We can't see them, but, we know they exist. She believes that spirits vibrate at a frequency which is above visible range.
Okay. And what's her second suggestion?
Well, she says watch for signs.
Okay.
It is her opinion that if we focus on good memories, we can raise the frequency of our own vibrations, thus making it easier for those who want to communicate to get to us.
That sounds a little bit similar to the law of attraction.
A wee bit, maybe.
Yeah.
And her last suggestion is that we should continue our relationship with those who have passed on, even though they are no longer here in person.
So just chatting with them?
Absolutely. She says that you can connect through a medium or channel by yourself.
Okay, so how do we channel by ourselves?
Well, just talk to them as you would in life. She even puts out a cup of coffee for her son when she has her chat.
Oh, okay.
I know.
I wonder if he drinks it.
I don't know.
So does she get an actual reply?
Well, I think she does. Apparently, you might hear a reply in your own voice in your head or your loved ones. And you can even better your chances of communicating if you play static, like static on a radio.
Oh, this kind of reminds me of that scene from Poltergeist when the little girl's touching the staticky TV screen.
Yes.
Yikes.
Now, we could do an episode on just that movie.
We
Harris.
could.
Here's another tip for you. You might be a little freaked out by this one, though.
Okay, bring it, Walker.
Well, this technique is called the hand game, where you place your hands apart, palm up. One hand you identify as a yes hand and the other the no hand. Then you proceed to ask your loved ones a question like, are they okay? She says then you can wait for a sensation in one of your hands. It might be a tingling or burning feeling. If you don't feel anything, you can ask them to bump it up a notch.
Okay, but my first question is, what do you do if they say they're not okay?
I don't know. I didn't read about that.
Okay, well, let's just hope that never happens. But this kind of sounds like using a pendulum, right? Like swing this way for yes and swing that way for no.
I was thinking the same thing. Dr. Metis also says that you might be able to actually see your spirit friend by sitting in complete darkness. In the darkness, we don't focus on anything in particular. Something might pop out at you, like their shape of their face or their body.
Like a jump scare? Now that sounds like how my passed on peeps might want to connect. Thank you for joining us at Home and Abroad with your host, Harrison Walker. If you enjoyed this episode, you would be a real gem if you would rate and review our show. It helps us to grow and expand our reach. You can also subscribe to follow us each week as we continue the conversation. Find us on Instagram at Harrison Walker or visit us at www.harrisonwalker.com. We have great merch, just saying. And of course, we would love to hear from you.